Hi, everyone, and welcome to our discussion on the latest developments concerning the Raiders, a new stadium, and where this team will end up after next season, or may end up. I'm Steve Dempsey with the Bay Area News Group, and I'm in Walnut Creek. Unfortunately, not joining us today. Just want to make that clear right off the bat. Oakland City reporter David Dolich. He's been pulled on assignment, so we won't have him here today, unfortunately. But joining us on the Google Hangout is Andy Dolich. Andy is an expert on sports stadiums and franchises, and he helped the Grizzlies move from Vancouver to Memphis, and he's been affiliated with some franchises you may know, such as the Warriors, the A's, and the 49ers. Thanks for joining us, Andy.
Go Dubs.
There you go.
And go Giants. And the question to Vinny when you introduce him is, where are the Raiders going? I'll leave that to you.
Okay. And from the Southland, Los Angeles Daily News sports columnist Vincent Bonsignore. He joins us, and he's been paying great attention to franchise movements. Thanks for joining us, Vinny.
You got it, guys. Happy to be here. And if you were to ask me that question right now, I would say that if Las Vegas follows through with its proposal and its financing for a stadium plan, I think that's where the Raiders will ultimately end up. But that's a big if.
Okay. Well,
yeah, and I think Vinny could be absolutely right. All the buzz, but as we talked about before we went on the air, this is a three-dimensional chess game, and it's not just Las Vegas, it's Inglewood, it's LA, it's Oakland, it's Alameda County, it's Vegas, and it's the NFL offices and the 31 other owners. So I think we'll have some in-depth topics to talk about and what really can set the foundation of a team moving from one market to another.
Okay, so before we get into that, I wanted to remind our viewers who are joining us live that you can ask questions during the broadcast, and we might read them on the air. You could do that over Scribble Live. So, but yeah, there's been some interesting developments after the Raiders have signed a one-year lease extension with the Coliseum, and then the Las Vegas Sands Casino Group and Majestic Realty proposed a $1.3 billion stadium project in which Mark Davis would put up $500 million. The Dome Stadium would be located on a 42-acre site. And so we'll start with the possibility of Las Vegas. But I remember 2 years ago, I believe the NFL turned down Las Vegas for hosting just one preseason game. And now all of a sudden, we're talking about the Raiders possibly moving there. Can you guys talk about that a little bit? And I'll throw it out to either one of you two.
Well, if you're asking why that change of heart, so to speak, and it appears that there will be a change of heart, or there is an ongoing change of heart. Number one, as far as hosting a preseason game in Las Vegas, there really isn't a stadium, NFL quality stadium, obviously, in Las Vegas to be able to host that type of event. So I think, and I'm sure that played into it a little bit. But if you were to say that they didn't go because they were afraid of, Las Vegas, the gambling aspects, the nightlife aspects of it, all of which are genuine, concerns and things that the NFL has to manage and figure out moving forward. But I think the reality of the situation is when a city is potentially offering $750 million to build a stadium, that catches the NFL's attention. And I think that everything else related to that, any concerns would be mitigated by the fact that they're just not going to turn their back on that kind of money. They just won't. Not in today's, with the temperature of today, where there's such a lack of an appetite by cities to publicly subsidize these type of stadiums. When somebody comes around offering that kind of money and that kind of partnership, then it gets the NFL's attention.
Well, Andy, what do you think about this change of heart that seems to be coming from the NFL. I mean, what happened to the gambling issue?
A few minutes of Vinny's answer I didn't hear. Are you hearing me? Just want to make sure.
Yeah, well, basically what I said was, there's a, when a city is offering 700, the kind of money that Las Vegas is proposing to enter into a partnership with the NFL and with the Raiders, that gets the NFL's attention, especially
Right.
considering where things are headed with a lot of these cities and the lack of appetite that cities have to publicly subsidize these stadiums. It's getting harder and harder for the NFL to tap into that sort of resource with cities, with the cities that they have partnerships with. So when a city does come around and is willing to offer up that kind of money to be a partner, it gets the NFL's attention regardless of where that city might be.
There's no doubt, and Roger Goodell and the other owners are in business to increase asset appreciation, and there's no better league in doing that than the NFL. I mean, the fluid that runs through the veins of pro sports is a simple color, green. I think we can all agree on that. Two areas that I'm concerned with as it relates to the $500 million, and again, without seeing records, you have no way of knowing, but it's clear that Mark Davis has said many times that they have $500 million to put into the deal in Vegas. My question is, first, is he including the $100 million bonus that the NFL said they would give him above and beyond the $200 million to build the stadium? And I think that $100 million, if I remember correctly, was only to build in Oakland. So is he including that $100 million in the $500 million? And has the NFL said, oh yeah, you have that in Vegas, and you also have the $200 million in Vegas? Now, Sheldon Adelson has said they believe that they're, $750 million short in Vegas, and that money would have to come from some sort of public money, which is always a question mark. And to me, the largest question, which hasn't been answered, is relocation. How much money is the NFL going to charge the Raiders or anybody else to move to Vegas? That could be an astounding figure. And where is that money coming from?
All valid questions in the reporting that I've done on a number of the subjects that you just touched upon. As it relates to the $100 million, no, as of right now, Mark's contribution does not include the extra $100 million. But from what I've been told, I think people kind of get stuck on the $100 million is available, to the Raiders or for the Chargers for that matter, to work out deals in their current markets. I've been told that the NFL will be flexible on that. As a for instance, if the Raiders end up in proposing to go to Las Vegas and Las Vegas is offering a significant amount of money to be partners, I think if that $100 million helps close the deal from the NFL's perspective, I think they'll be fairly flexible on that. So I wouldn't rule out the $100 million being available, but it's not written into the deal as we sit today. As far as a relocation fee, if there is a relocation fee, and I'll get back to the reasons why there might not be one, but if there is one, from the way it's been explained to me, it won't be anywhere near the $550 million that it was to go to Los Angeles. That's not going to happen, number one. Number two, when you look at a move for the Raiders to Las Vegas, and again, we have to reiterate the fact that how much money Las Vegas is actually offering, and however that turns out to be, whether it's $750 million or $600 million, whatever their public contribution will be, the NFL is going to take notice of that. And so as far as any sort of resistance to allowing that to happen, or putting obstacles in the Raiders' way as far as a relocation fee, I would hesitate to go down that direction, because a Raiders move to Las Vegas checks off a lot of boxes for a lot of people that in or in addition to helping the Raiders and helping Mark Davis. If you're Stan Kroenke in Los Angeles, you would much rather have the Raiders in Las Vegas than in your own backyard in LA. So you could pretty much count on Stan Kroenke being on board with this and throwing his support behind something like this. B, if you're Dean Spanos in San Diego, whether you end up in Los Angeles or remain in San Diego, the Raiders in Las Vegas makes way more sense for you because you're not dealing with them in any way, shape, or form. For instance, if the Chargers went to Los Angeles and things weren't working out in Las Vegas or in Oakland, the Raiders would then turn to San Diego, and you know that Dean Spanos doesn't want that to happen. So he would want the Raiders clear of out of his market and his region. So he would support a Raiders.
Vinny, if I can interrupt for a second on that point, wouldn't it be in the NFL's best interest, and probably where the NFL doesn't want to go, and what we won't see is 3 teams in, let's call it the southern basis, whether it's San Diego, 2 in Inglewood, or any other such circumstance. They don't really want 3 teams in that mark.
Right. I think ideally they wouldn't. I mean, if it had to come to that.
Fair or not?
Yeah. No. That's certainly fair. I think ideally they would rather not have 3 teams in that close proximity. They would do it if they had to, if that was their only alternative. But I'll take it a step further. What the NFL would truly prefer is that the Chargers remain in San Diego, the Raiders either stay in Oakland, or if that doesn't work out, and it doesn't look like it will, they go to Las Vegas, and you leave that second spot open in Los Angeles to use as leverage for Buffalo and New Orleans and Jacksonville and any other city that is in a partnership right now with the NFL, whose a stadium is coming up for either remodeling or just to build a new stadium. They can always use that second spot in Los Angeles as leverage.
Well, okay, but here's one of my points here. I mean, I know there's a lot of money involved. Can you hear us, Andy? We might have lost Andy there just briefly.
Breaking up a little, I wanted to throw a wild card into the over conversation.
Okay.
That's a real wild card.
Well, let me continue.
That's such a wild card. If you can hear me, being that if in fact the NFL, I mean, you look at Vegas as a potential marketplace, and it has its positives, it also has its shortcomings. If it was so terrific and so easy to move there, there'd already be one of the big 4 sports teams there. I think it's obvious that having a football team there would be the most successful, but wouldn't the NFL be better off waiting a few years, figuring out how they can really harness the power of legalized gaming, which is going to happen, and look at Vegas as an expansion market, let's say 2, and the NFL is the only professional sports league that could actually end these days without hurting themselves, and get way more than $250 million, let's just say that's the expansion fee. You'd easily get $3 billion from a Vegas expansion with the kind of money and opportunity that's there. And if I'm an owner, wouldn't I rather have 1/32 of $3 billion, hypothetically, than 1/32 of 0, if it's a 0 relocation, as Vinny hypothesizes, or if it's 100 or 200 or even 300 million? What about that?
Well, certainly you raise a lot of interesting points, and I think, ideally, that probably would be the best, way to proceed in as far as Las Vegas. But unfortunately, we're not in an ideal type set of circumstances, and let's always remember that there's a clock ticking on that second option in Los Angeles. San Diego has first dibs. We know that. They have technically a year to decide whether to stay in San Diego or pursue their agreed upon option in Los Angeles. The Raiders are waiting in the wings. they have the second dibs on that, and by vote. And this is, there's no going back on this. There's no, I read, speculation that the NFL would try to block the Raiders from going to Los Angeles if it came to that. That can't happen. They've already voted on that to happen, and I've talked to enough people in the NFL.
This doesn't go to another vote if the Chargers move forward on their stadium in and around San Diego. From your league sources and all that, it's not a re-vote. The Raiders have that right, which was given to them when the original Inglewood situation was resolved.
Correct. There is no re-vote. They already voted in Houston, and the way that vote turned out was, obviously the Rams +1, and the 1 is to be determined. And again, here comes another, aspect of this to keep in mind. Now, if the Raiders can always, the way it's been explained to me in San Diego, it could take years for that picture to get clarity. The chances that it's going to get rectified within the next 12 months are fairly remote. There's a lot of resistance to where the Chargers are trying to build. There's a lot of factors to that. We all understand that. If you're the Chargers and you truly want to stay in San Diego, your best asset is time. Is time to be able to get that done. But your second best asset is still having Los Angeles in your back pocket in case you need to go to Los Angeles. So the time and the opportunity go hand in hand. And if you're the Raiders, you can tell the Chargers, look, we will gladly step aside to give you Los Angeles indefinitely. Just support us on a move to Las Vegas, because then you have the Raiders situation is taken care of, and then the Chargers can proceed cautiously and optimistically in San Diego, knowing that nothing is lost to them in Los Angeles. And I think that for fans in San Diego, for the NFL, that's not a bad path to take, because you're giving San Diego every opportunity, and Dean Spanos, every opportunity to get it done in San Diego, and hopefully it does get done. But if it doesn't get done, if ultimately San Diego just can't forge a viable partnership, then the Chargers would always have Los Angeles to turn back to.
Okay,
So,
I need to interrupt. Andy,
go ahead.
Okay,
Go
thanks. Yeah, because we got fans' questions, and so I want to jump in here since our time is pretty limited. Todd Shaw, he asks, if the Chargers get a done deal in San Diego, I mean, do you think the Raiders would pass on Los Angeles for Las Vegas?
Yes, if the money was, if Las Vegas was able to get approval for that kind of public participation in the stadium, yes, they would absolutely prefer Las Vegas than Los Angeles.
And can I just throw in an answer to that question? Because Mark has had a number of statements that sort of battle with each other in this scenario over the past few years. And, I was at the Niners when there were preliminary discussions with Al Davis, Amy Trask, and the league is clearly in favor of two-team solutions where it's possible, and you don't have to go any further than New York and the Jets and the Giants. So what is the advantage to the Raiders, in your view, Vinny, for them to bypass the Bay Area, where they do have a significant following? And I know they're Raider Nation in Southern California, but Mark is, to a certain extent, talking out of both sides of his mouth. I want to play in my own stadium. I'd move to Los Angeles and play with the Rams, who are there first, developing a beachhead, and I'll bypass the Bay Area. How does that get answered?
Well, I don't think his preference is to go to Los Angeles as currently constructed with the Rams. I think that he would go if that was essentially the only viable opportunity that he had. In Las Vegas, he believes that he can build a market not just in Las Vegas, but also in the surrounding areas. And I could tell you just, from my perspective, I've gotten emails and correspondence from people in Salt Lake City, Phoenix, San Diego, Orange County, San Bernardino County, Riverside County, Los Angeles, and up and down the West Coast, literally saying, is this for real? Because if it is, I would support my Raiders in Las Vegas. I would buy season tickets. I would buy PSLs. I would support the Raiders and commute to Las Vegas from those various points that I just mentioned. And I think that the Raiders obviously are counting on that kind of support, not just in and around Las Vegas, but also in Las Vegas and in that region.
Yeah, and that also brings up the time to get into, but seat licenses in part of it, seat license.
Okay. Okay, Andy, we're starting to lose you.
I think he was talking about the personal seat license sales and
Okay, go ahead, Vinny.
Yeah, I think he was talking about the PSL sales and the money and revenue that's generated from that goes to stadium construction and the viability of it. I'm sure in a new market, would Las Vegas and the surrounding areas support the PSL sales? That remains to be seen. I know that the Raiders and the NFL, or at least the Raiders, are doing their research. There's been questionnaires that have gone out to Las Vegas. I've had some friends who are Raider season ticket holders in Los Angeles who have already gotten those questionnaires on, would they support a stadium in Las Vegas? Would they support, seats? What type of seats do they want? PSLs and et cetera, et cetera. And from what I understand, at least for the people that I talk to, the reaction has been very, very positive from fans in Las Vegas and the fans that I know of anyway in Southern California.
Vinny, fan question here from Just Win Baby. Is there a worry about Las Vegas's vulnerability for attracting too many away fans? Having thousands at the game rooting for the away team concerns me.
Yeah, there's no doubt that that's something that has to be managed and rectified. And I've talked to Mark Davis about that, and I know that the Raiders are looking at ways to manage that and to make sure that that doesn't happen. And I think the first and foremost, the way you definitely don't make it happen or make it so that it doesn't happen is win. You win on the field, and so that your fans want to be at your game supporting your team, and you put a great product out there, and generally that's going to negate that. Now, on down years, could that be a possibility? Sure. But I'll tell you this. I've been to San Diego when the Chargers have played the Raiders, and no disrespect to my readers and people in San Diego, but the Raider fans take over San Diego Stadium consistently, in good years and in bad years. So, I think it would be a concern for other teams more than it would be for the Raiders. There's just something about the Raider Nation or Raider Nation that really resonates, especially, I live in Southern California, so I see it all the time. And I'm not just talking about Los Angeles, Riverside, San Bernardino County, Orange County, even into San Diego, and that's a short drive and a very short flight to Las Vegas. And the fans that I've talked to would be on board with it. But yes, there is a concern about that happening, and the Raiders and the NFL would have to figure out ways to manage it.
Okay, I've got another question coming up. Give me a second here. What is Juan Flores asked? What is the timeline or approximate timeline for funding approval by the Nevada State Legislature and the Tourism Tax Committee? Do you know that, Vinny?
Well, it's sort of a moving target at this point, but there are two big meetings that are coming up in June and early July through the Tourism Committee, that the Southern Nevada Tourism Committee that takes a look at these types of projects, whether they're stadiums or anything else that that are being requested to tap into the tourism tax in Las Vegas and Nevada. So two more meetings with them, and then they're going to make a recommendation, one way or another, whether to say yes, we think that the money that's being requested is justified, and we recommend it. And then it goes to the governor, and it goes to the state legislators, and then it's ultimately in their court. Now, from what I understand, the next time the state leaders meet is in, I believe it's February of 2017. So, however, the governor has the power to be able to call a special session. I've heard that if things are going well and if there's momentum building, that could possibly happen as early as August. So we could have a decision by August, or maybe we have a decision, by February or thereafter. But then again, as in addition to all that, approving the money is a lot different than actually then putting together a plan in writing that you put in front of Mark Davis or you put in front of the NFL. So, from what I've been told anyway, you're looking at about maybe 12 months before everything gets put in place that gets put on paper and onto the desk of Mark Davis in the NFL.
Okay. So basically, here's a straight question by Mayor. What is the city of Oakland actually doing?
That's a great question. And I'm sure Andy can probably answer that a little bit better.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Andy, we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think Mo Green from Vegas came in and the deal. That is the $640 million question or the $1.6 billion question. And, from my perspective, I think Oakland quietly has pushed their chips in at the table with the A's. I think that's what they believe the future is at the Coliseum. The Warriors have planned their new arena to open by 2019, still has its challenges. The Raiders are moving as hard as they can to move somewhere, not Oakland. But I think they look at the economics of 81 baseball games and the A's development capability on that large piece of land, and that's the other point that's significant here, and that has its own discussion. And now the news of the developer group led by Ronnie Lott and a few other people. But I think very quietly the A's have made a decision. If the Raiders have to go, the Raiders have to go.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, I don't think, obviously it's not been said publicly, but by all, by in action or inaction, I think that's where that's headed. And I think the Raiders have resigned themselves to that reality. At where they sit right now, there just doesn't appear to be an appetite or a path available to create a deal that's mutually beneficial or works for the city and the county and the Raiders. And I think a large part of that is probably what Andy just said. They're going to side with the A's on this one.
That's very interesting. So, what do we know about this group led by Ronnie Lott and Rodney Peete? Does this thing possibly have any traction with it?
Well, all I can say is that the mayor herself publicly stated that she would not deal with any development group. She would deal directly with the Raiders, and Vinny knows more about this than I in terms of what, if any, conversations substantive have gone on between the Raiders and the city and the authorities in the last month or two. I haven't heard much. And that if you look at the history of developer groups, and Lott's is the third or fourth, first you have to have extremely deep pockets, which the first group had, and nothing came of that because you have to have absolute buy-in by both the A's and the Raiders, and I don't see any way that that's happening.
Yeah, as it relates to Ronnie Lott, I think there's great respect for Ronnie by the Raiders. He's an alum of their team. He's an icon in the NFL, but I think from their perspective, it just goes way deeper than, an investor at this point coming on. When you have the spectrum of the A's and the debt that's on that land and the lack of clarity on land use, those are the real issues. Once those get rectified, then you can start talking about bringing on a developer and making a plan and how to proceed forward. But we're at a standstill, or they're at a standstill as far as that all goes. So I don't think that, again, all the respect in the world to Ronnie Lott and the team that he's put together, but it goes a lot deeper than just bringing on an investor to help out.
Okay, quickly, I'm going to go with one more viewer question here. And this comes, again, just win baby. Mark mentioned during the press conference when they were signing the Coliseum extension that they would look into other sites in the Bay Area. What would those sites be, you think? Andy, you want to take that?
I would, but I've got to be real quick. I just
quick. and that was quick.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you're familiar, Vinny. I don't know what other sites there would be in the Bay Area. Maybe.
Yeah, that's a great question, and you know, I don't know. Nothing. There's been, you know, to my knowledge and through my reporting, nothing has emerged as a you know, alternative to the Coliseum land in Oakland. I think at this point it's full bore ahead with Las Vegas, and I think that, you know, it's an unfortunate situation in Oakland, but I think Andy pretty much hit the nail on the head as far as Oakland and Alameda pushing their chips into the middle of the table on behalf of the A's. I think ultimately that might be where this is all headed, and I think it will come at the expense of the Raiders. Unfortunately, their time in Oakland, but I think, you know, from the Raiders' perspective, that's fine. I mean, it doesn't sit well with them. Obviously, they want to remain in Oakland, but that's what the situation is, and as a result, they have to find an alternative place. And right now, they've zeroed in on Las Vegas. I've talked to Mark Davis about this, and his goal is he wants clarity. He wants to know, where am I going to be for the next 30 years that's going to be viable and profitable, and allow us to be able to be financially competitive with the top teams in the NFL. That's his objective.
Okay, and we will end it on that note. Vincent Bonsignore, thank you for joining us.
Got it.
And Andy Dolich, you're out there somewhere. Thank you for joining us. Our apologies for any technical difficulties there. I'm Steve Dempsey with the Bay Area News Group, and thank you for joining us.
Take care, guys.